Welcome everyone to the Community Oversight. The 5th, 3 p.m. And I think instead of going through a roll call vote, since I don't have a list of members in front of me, I'm going to go through the list of names that I see on my screen. So I have Ms. Ross.
Present.
Mr. Goddard.
Present.
Mr. Is Mr. Witzel on the line?
Present.
Thank you. And Mr. Hughes.
Present.
We are waiting on Jamel, I think, and Mr. Sweeney said he wasn't going to be able to make it, and I don't know if Dr. Hildreth was going to come. Do you know that, Director Pitchard?
Yeah, Ms. Hildreth is coming. Miss Hildreth is coming, and so is Jamel. I think that they were just having some issues logging in.
Okay. To start, Director Pitchard, can you give us a bit of background on how this agreement has come to be, how it's come to the stage that it's in?
Actually, Chair Martinez, if you don't mind, can I do the electronic meeting statement and then we can pick up?
Got it. Let's do the electronic meeting statement. Sorry about that, Todd.
Well, that's perfectly fine. Under Executive Order 16, Governor Lee suspended the in-person quorum requirements for meetings. That has since been extended through Executive Orders 34, 51, and now 60, which is currently set to expire on October 28th. So if we could just get a motion and a second stating that we are meeting today to conduct essential business to protect the safety and welfare of Tennesseans.
Second.
So we'll go through. I only heard the second. So,
This is Brenda. I made the motion.
okay. All right. I will go through a roll call vote here. If I can't see on the screen, let me know. But I have Ms. Ross.
Yes.
Mr. Goddard.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell-Gooch.
Yes.
Dr. Hildreth.
She's experiencing some computer issues.
Okay. Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Mr. Witzel.
Yes.
Is there anyone else on the line that I may not be able to see? No, I guess not. And
No, but Mr. Campbell-Gooch is on, and so I think we should, since your connection is kind of spotty, I think we should move over to Mr. Campbell-Gooch.
thank you.
Thank you. Have a great, okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm here. This is Phyllis. I'm on the phone, so I may have trouble maneuvering.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Campbell-Gooch, can you take over?
Yes, I can, but if somebody can catch me up on where we are, sorry for being late.
That's okay. Where we are is Mr. Martinez wanted me to kind of give a recap on why we are having this meeting and talk before we get into the document. I mean, before we get deep into the meeting, to explain why we're here and what the document is about.
Okay, thank you for that. Do we need to read the electronic meetings statement, or did we just voted on that, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. First, I think I definitely received the MOU, so I'm hoping that everyone else did. Jill, if you want to hop into that, Director Fisher.
Okay, sure. I'm hoping that everyone received the document, and I wanted to start, and if you didn't, just raise your hand and I will email it to you quickly. The document that you have is the newest draft. It's not the very first draft, and I'm going to read you the language that was in the very first draft. It's just one sentence that was changed. But I want to take you back a little bit. So at our last board meeting in August, there was a meeting scheduled, and Miss Hildreth went over this with you, but just to give a quick recap, back on our August meeting, there was a meeting scheduled with Bob Cooper, Mike Hager, Glenn Funk, and myself and Mr. Clausey, and we were going to talk about this new agreement that would be between the three agencies, which is the COB, the DAG, which is the District Attorney General, and the MMPD. And this came about in regards to the use of force records that we wanted, and just the fact that we were having to go through the District Attorney's Office to get records that really that we have always maintained weren't Rule 16 issues and that they belong to MMPD. And so, as Ms. Hildreth stated in the meeting, we decided to go forward with that meeting since there was so much work put into it. And this was something different than the regular MOU that we had drafted. So we couldn't really convert this meeting into a MOU meeting because it was different people in the room as it pertained to this new document. And so I received this new document as well as the addendum. I have emailed you all the addendum. I wasn't sure if you got it in the past, but I sent it to you today because it is noted in this new agreement. And so in this new agreement, basically what it says essentially is that we will get all of the records straight from MMPD, which is what we've always wanted. And that Rule 16 isn't necessarily an issue for the records any longer, that we would get those records directly from MMPD. If any of the records have an issue or have those added confidentialities that you'll see in the addendum, then that is when we would, have this agreement with the District Attorney General to also be able to view those records. And that's really to the extent that law allows us, because in that addendum, there was 11 things that were listed, and some of those had added protections that by law, by state law and provision, we wouldn't be able to get, And so the District Attorney General was, trying to come up with an agreement for all three of us to be able to get the records and also protect, I'm assuming, whatever agreements he has with MMPD, so that they're able to obtain records. And so that is what you see in the document. So if you want to go through it, and I don't know if you can see it, it's on the screen. Let's see here. Let me look at it. So in the second paragraph, it says the Metropolitan National Police Department manual allows MMPD employees to provide records related to an ongoing criminal investigation to the Office of the District Attorney General for legitimate and legal purposes. MMPD Manual 12.10.030, the DAG office can then use those records for authorized business purposes. The next paragraph states, the DAG office signed a systems access agreement dated February 3rd, 2015, with the MMPD, allowing the DAG office access to records maintained in MMPD's Advanced Records Management System. The system contains some, but not all records in the possession of the MMPD related to an ongoing criminal investigation. The next paragraph states, disclosure of evidence. by the DAG office is governed by Rule 16 of the Tennessee Rules of Criminal Procedure, which has been held by Tennessee courts to be an exception to the State Public Records Act. The MMPD defers to the legal judgment of the DAG office and the Metropolitan Department of Law as to whether the disclosure of records to the Community Oversight Board of the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County, subject to the confidentiality requirements of Tennessee Code Annotated 38-8312E, would be consistent with Rule 16. The MMPD otherwise would not consider disclosure of records to the COB to violate the agreement. The next paragraph, the DAG office and the Metropolitan Department of Law consider disclosure subject to the confidentiality requirements of Tennessee Code Annotated 38-8312E by MMPD to the COB of any records, including but not limited to records available on the system, to be consistent with Rule 16. Upon receipt of a records request from the COB, the MMPD will provide those records directly to the COB. MMPD maintains, and this is the next paragraph, the MMPD maintains records regarding use of force and allegations of officer dishonesty. When reports of such incidents are generated, the MMPD shall forward them to the DAG and the COB. The COB will provide, so right there, we're going to stop because the paragraph that was in the original statement said the COB will provide to the DAG office all interviews conducted by the COB of witnesses related to pending criminal cases. And I'm going to read the next paragraph, and then I'm going to go back to that. The next paragraph says, notwithstanding any other provision of this memorandum of understanding, documents containing information identified in Exhibit A to this memorandum or information subject to other confidentiality restrictions brought to the attention of the MMPD shall not be disclosed to the COB pursuant to this memorandum unless such information is redacted or the COB is granted access by appropriate authority. Exhibit A shall be revised in the event of the identification of other confidentiality restrictions. So when we got the first draft, which was on 9/14 of 20, and we went through it, I was concerned about the language where it said the COB will provide to the DAG office all interviews conducted by the COD of witnesses related to pending criminal cases. And so we had a lot of dialogue back and forth about that because the district attorney general has, according to the rules that they have to adhere to under the rules of criminal procedure, they have to release any recordings or any knowledge of interviews to the defense, to the defense. And so it became a big discussion regarding Brady. They talked to the attorney, I'm sorry, and Todd can jump in a little bit more and talk about who they spoke with, and they got an opinion from the Attorney General's office. And so I thought it was just a big problem. And so what we did was I talked to General Funk, came up with some new language, and that's the language that's being presented to you today. And that language reads, the COB will provide to the DAG office a narrative summary in the recorded interviews where there is a related open criminal case prosecution on or after the 61st day of the COB's investigation. The COB will notify the DAG office as soon as possible if the COB needs additional time to provide these records. And so we negotiated, and that was the language that we came up with regarding our cases. Since we have a 60-day timeline on our records, I thought it would make more sense that we complete our investigation, and then whatever information they request, that they could at that point request that information just as if it was a public records request. And so I'm going to stop there and let you ask any questions before I move on. And then I might let Mr. Pinkley ask if you have some legal questions. All right, I don't see any questions. Go ahead, Mr. Goode.
First, I was gonna say thank you for this succinct review. I was just gonna ask you, how does this make you feel, or just like, is this? Do you think that this is the best that we can get?
Well, yeah, well, let me just say this. When I read the first statement, which was to turn over all of our stuff, kind of like in a blanket way, I was really, really concerned about that. And so, I brought it back to Mr. Cooper, as well as Mr. Bunton, because I felt like of course, it didn't set well with me that we are working investigations, and then we're also being, in my opinion, and I could have been wrong, but it felt like we were intertwining into criminal court cases. And so I had lots of questions. They answered my questions, and the language that we came to is language that I actually created. So I feel pretty good about it. And I did want to touch a little bit on the addendum, because the addendum has a list of. So before I get into the addendum, let me just say that what this actually means is that we would get all of our records through MMPD. There is only a few records that we would have to get from the department, from the district attorney's office. So we would now get everything released to us straight from MMPD. And the records that fall under these confidentiality protections, we would have to ask, the district attorney general's office to take a look at these cases to determine if we could get that information from them. And basically what they're saying is, that they would allow us to review these records. We may not necessarily need a copy of it, but we would, and maybe we would get a copy, but, we haven't worked out the logistics, but we would still have access to those. Now I'm going to move into the addendum. And in the addendum, there is, like I said, 11 things. I'm going to read the addendum because I'm going to read the ones that have the added protections. So number 1 says rape, sex crimes related to adults. The second one is child sexual abuse records and information. The third one is child abuse records and information. The fourth one is domestic violence orders and orders of protection. The fifth one is juvenile offenses. 6 is health and mental health records. 7 is confidential informant information. 8 is criminal intelligence information, field interviews, Crime Stopper tips. Number 9 is expunge arrest records, files, and information. Number 10 is TBI records. And number 11 is information gleaned from NCIC ties or inlets and protected under the TBI or FBI rules. And so there was some added protections to some of these cases. So in number 1, rapes and sex crimes related to adults, we don't believe that there's a provision for a DA waiver. And so, but I'm not going to get into the legal part. I'll let Todd do that. Seems to authorize us to be able to get these. So there's some things in the provisions that Todd went through, and he can talk a little bit about those. Todd, you want to jump in and talk about that?
Sure. So with some of these, there's kind of a list of things that we can probably get, and then there's kind of a list of things that we'll likely never get. And for some of these, especially the ones that involve children, those are going to likely fall into the category of things that we'll never get. As far as the first one goes, Director Fitcher kind of hit on it already. There is a provision within the rape and sex crimes related to adults that would allow us some access as a government agency. It's in subsection, I believe it's 5. It says something to the effect of that access isn't limited to law enforcement, courts, or other governmental agencies performing official functions. So I feel that Q5 would most likely cover us and allow us to have access to the records. But as I said, with cases that are involving children, they're afforded significant protections under state case law and statute. So those records are not as likely to be released to us. And then some of the other ones that were listed in these 11, I don't know how frequently they would come up in our particular cases. But for something like the health and mental health records, I think that one would be solved by getting a waiver from the complainant, something that simple. And then for TBI records specifically, that'll come down to what ends up in our TBI MOU.
Right. So do you guys have any questions about that, about the addendum?
Thank you both for that. I do have a question, but I'm gonna sure no one else does. So it seems like that we are good with where this is, and it also seems like coming next. Mr. Pinkley and Director Fish both spoke on that. So what would happen after this? What would need to happen to make sure that we are as strong as possible on access to records?
So what I sent you, which is the last draft dated 9/23, would just need to be voted on, and then we would get that signed. Today I received an email from the people that were listed on there. So Glenn approved the language. Mike Hager, he also said that this didn't really have this particular agreement. It wasn't basically agreement between the District Attorney General's office and the COB. And so he is almost certain that Chief Drake will sign it. And so those are the two main stakeholders in here besides us. And so it just needs to be approved, and then we can move on. I did want to talk a little bit before we even got to that part, is the use of force records. There was this big thing with the use of force records that we asked, and all of the records went to the district attorney's office. But I did want to say that the police department, after we requested them, we had that meeting last month, or it was sometime early in the month, they did release all the use of force records to the district attorney's office. The district attorney's office in turn had to review all of the records. And so it took a long time for them to do that. And hopefully this will speed up the process so that it wouldn't take like 3 weeks to get that information like it did before. It may have even been a little longer. I can't even remember. But I asked Dr. Valier to be here to talk about the records that he received and talk about the redactions and what that looked like, so that we're all aware of what took place with those use of force records, and then how it kind of, how this particular agreement can, kind of speed up the process moving forward. So, Dr. Valier?
Thanks. So the records that we did receive, the information that was redacted tended to be addresses of suspects, victims, witnesses, as well as some phone numbers, birth dates of witnesses, victims, suspects. So at least for the purposes that we're using these records for, which is to look at the investigative process and the report writing itself, as well as how uses of force are investigated and reviewed, that doesn't cause any problems with our ability to know what's in the reports or the report narratives. And the redactions are really just focused on that personally identifying information that could allow somebody to track down a witness, suspect, or victim. And the categories that are on that list are the ones that we were not able to get. And so in the process of reviewing the requests that we put in, the district attorney's office came up against, I think, many of those categories, and worked with the different stakeholders in order to put together a list of the categories that require extra protections. But what we were able to receive has almost all of the information in them, and is very moderate in the redactions.
Okay, thank you. And I will say that in my understanding, reading this new document, that when we ask for those use of force reports, the only redactions going forward would be redactions that really pertain to what's in the confidentiality agreement. So that addendum. So for instance, if it's a use of force for a theft of property, and not pertaining to any of the issues that are like rape or sex crimes or child sexual abuse and those types of things, then that information would not be redacted. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, yes, you answered. Yes, you answered mine. Thank you all for that robust, succinct detailing of the MOU here. I'm want to hold space again. Are there any board members with any questions or thoughts or concerns? All right, you can leave the floor open for a motion.
I make a motion that we accept this addendum and for the MOU.
Thank you for that, member Ross. Does any
I just want to be clear that this is an MOU and the addendum is a part of the MOU. So it's not just two separate things. It's one thing that has an addendum attached to it.
Okay, so I'll go back and clarify. I make a motion that we accept the MOU.
Second.
Thank you for that clarification, Board Member Ross. Thank you for that second. Member Gooder, we're gonna do roll call vote. Any focused discussion? Okay, so we're gonna do a roll call vote. Member Ross.
Aye.
Thank you. Member Gooder.
Aye.
Thank you. Member Hildreth.
Aye.
Thank you. Member Witzel.
Aye.
Thank you. Member.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Motion passes.
Great, thank you. And then I just have one other thing. It's not on the agenda, but we also have been in talks with TBI for their MOU. And so we're going to get that scheduled. They have a copy of the MOU agreement. And so we're just waiting for them to vet it and set up a time for us to have a conversation about it.
Thank you for that. And then after that conversation, that would come back in front of the Rules Committee, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. I can't see the agenda, but I feel like that's the only thing on the agenda.
Besides news, yes, that's the only thing. And then New business or announcements?
Chair
Thank
Campbell
you.
Gooch, I apologize for not raising my hand electronically, but I'm on the phone and I can't figure out the controls. May I just make a quick statement about this process into the record?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I want to thank you for chairing the committee. I want to thank the committee members and the other board members who convened on relatively short notice to make this process so seamless and so timely. I also want to publicly recognize the amount of energy and attentiveness that various other stakeholders have brought to this process especially within the last month around generating the ideas for the separate district attorneys MOU of being responsive to our board concerns about minding our process and not rushing things through, about considering Director Fitchert's concerns and responding to her requested amendments. I just want to acknowledge that there has been cooperation, and their cooperation with our continued diligence and adherence to project process is putting us in a position to do well in a good way. And so I just appreciate you for allowing me to make that statement.
Thank you for that statement. Brenda, Member Ross, you have your hand raised.
Yes, and I appreciate you, Ms. Hilbert, for all your negotiations and working so hard on the MOU. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Absolutely. It took the entire family to get over this. It seems like we've been dealing with this for quite some while, and it's great to put closure. I see, Board Member Ross, you have your hand still raised. Okay, I see your hand went down. Are there any other announcements?
Yes, I have one. We have an MOU, the MOU between MMPD and COB scheduled for this Tuesday, which is September the 29th at, I want to say 3 p.m. And so hopefully that will go well. I feel really confident that it will. And as Board Member Hildreth noted in our meeting a few days ago, that we seem to have a whole lot more cooperation, and as well as we made significant changes to the MOU, and so I am really interested in seeing what their response is. So we'll keep you guys posted on that as well.
Great. And with that being said, are there any other announcements? If not, I'll take a motion.
Make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Thank you for that, Member Ross. Thank you for that second, Member Goodard. Any focused discussion? Okay. Roll call vote. Member Ross.
Aye.
Member Goodard.
Aye.
Member Hildreth.
Aye.
Member Witzel. Member Hughes.
Aye.
Member Witzel, if you can try that one more again. I didn't hear you. I'm not sure if others did.
Aye.
Gotcha. Heard. With that, the motion carries. Everyone have a great weekend.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming.
I'll
Thank
take
you.
that.
Being here. Bye. Have a good weekend.